Hey everybody, this is George Willett. We are doing our Bible study through the book of Acts. We have been on chapter 11. Again, as I said before, we decided last year that we wanted to do this Bible study and do a verse by verse. We love the book of Acts. We think it's all the books of the Bible are important, but for an understanding of the New Testament church, a study of Acts is vital. So we're going to finish 11 tonight. Some great things are happening. And so let's just recap a little bit. Peter had gone and talked to Cornelius. God had said, you need to go to this Gentile, share the gospel, the words of salvation. He did, and that was a real radical thing because Jews and Gentiles, you didn't mix. And the Jewish believers in Jesus were still kind of thinking in a very Jewish mindset. And the Messiah is for the Jews. And if someone wanted to be with Jesus, that's great. They would come in and you'd be Jewish and then, Jesus saves. And God revealed that the gospel's for everyone, that Jesus came and died for our sins to save everyone that would believe. And then he goes and he goes back to Jerusalem. They hear all of this. He gives his defense. And the gospel then spreads. It starts going up. We start hearing about the city of Antioch in Syria and how believers from far, far away went to Antioch. Quite honestly, a cesspit. I mean, it was a city that was known for its sin, known for its pagan idolatry. It was a very important city. So the believers are like, yeah, we want to share Jesus. This is a great place. They need Jesus there, and it's this big place, and it's kind of a center, and Christianity will spread from there. So the apostles sent Barnabas, this wonderful, loving, kind, encouraging man who he went to Antioch. He observed, he investigated. He saw that the Spirit of God was there. He rejoiced, and he begins teaching. Well, even more people, like you just have crowds and crowds of people, and he quickly realized, I can't do ministry alone. Well, Tarsus is not too far away. I kind of go north and hang a left, or go west, and there's this city. And in Tarsus is this guy, Saul, that I remember from about a decade ago. Was a persecutor of the church, was an enemy of Jesus, hated Jesus and his followers, but then met Jesus on the road to Damascus. So Saul submits to the lordship of Jesus Christ. He is baptized there in Damascus, and he is then taught by Jesus and begins just proclaiming Jesus everywhere. Goes to Jerusalem, is known as he who again was persecuting the faith, and now he's preaching the faith. And then he received persecution. People wanted to kill him, so he was sent by the leaders back to his home of Tarsus. All these years have passed, and Barnabas is like, I'm going to go. And he goes, and the Greek there is, he hunted him down, like he had to put effort into finding him. And now we pick up in verse 26 of Acts 11. And when he, Barnabas, had found him, Saul, he brought him to Antioch, and for an entire year they met with the church and taught considerable numbers. And the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Now again, once Saul has been found, Barnabas brings him back. He's like, hey, there's ministry to be done. Jesus needs to be proclaimed, and Luke doesn't record what was actually said. But it doesn't seem like Saul needed a lot of convincing. It was just like he brought him back to Antioch. And Barnabas probably is like, listen, I finally found you. Jesus is doing all of these great things, and I need help. Will you come and go on a mission from God with me? And it seems like Saul's like, let's go. I'm all in. So together, Barnabas and Saul, they make this great, amazing ministry team. And for a whole year, they met with the church. The word there is ecclesia. That word, it's this gathering of believers in Antioch. They're considered to be fully members of the body of Christ. And the word means the called out ones. They're this group that are called out of this way of life, this area, Together, they're being trained, equipped, taught to go out and bring the gospel to other people. To be part of the ecclesia is to be a saint, to be a disciple, to be a believer of Jesus. That means we're the called out ones. We're called out to go on mission, to be equipped and trained and prepared, to become more like Jesus in mission and in character, and go out and bring more people into the family. And what I love about this whole thing of ecclesia is that regardless, it doesn't matter your location, your ethnicity, your background, your past, in Christ, all of that ceases to matter because we are unified in Christ. And in that verse, what did Barnabas and Paul do with the church, the ecclesia? They taught. The word in the Greek, didasko, is they teach, they instruct, they would impart knowledge. They are causing people to learn, to grow, to understand, and then to do something with it. You see, and for all of us, if you're a Christian, if you're a follower of Christ, once you come to him, we're students. That's what we're called to be. It's not the end. It's the beginning of this life of submitting to Jesus and learning about him and studying the Bible and listening to the Holy Spirit and becoming who we were created to be. For disciples, I mean, we're saved and our salvation is assured, but we're still called to grow. We should be alive and living and learning. And I think in the American church, in the modern church, I don't think it's just America, but part of this problem is that it's almost like people, well, once I've given my life to Jesus Christ, I'm done, I'm fine, I can check that box. But that's not it. It's being all in. It is wanting to come to the gathering and worship God as a family and to be trained, equipped, edified. That's one of those Bible words. You're built up in grace and in knowledge. You understand this relationship better, and you understand what is required of you. Like, you're saved, and that doesn't have anything to do with my work or what I do. I'm saved because of what Jesus did. But once I'm saved, there are things that I am to do because I'm saved. We must grow in that. For the believer to remain strong, we've got to be taught. For the believer to be faithful, we must be taught. For the believer to serve, we must be taught. For the believer to grow, we must be taught. For the believer to stand steadfast and immovable in their faith, we must be taught. For the believer to receive comfort, to receive peace, we must be taught. For the believer to obey and to be faithful, we must be taught. For the believer to love and to serve and to go and to make more disciples, we must be taught. And I think that's the part that's missing all too often in the church today, is this imperative, this desire that the leaders are going to take it seriously, that we are called to teach what the apostles taught, what Jesus taught, what God requires. And not just teach for knowledge, but teach for application. Like, now we live our lives this way. All too often we believe that we're just supposed to be. We're supposed to be at the worship gathering. We're supposed to be together, and then we leave and nothing really changes. And in America today, we don't even take the call to gather that seriously anymore. It used to be regular worship attendance was every week. You went at least every Sunday. Lots of times it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, and people think, oh, that is just extreme. Well, nowadays, if you attend once every 4 to 6 weeks, that's considered regular attendance. But in the church, in the church of Acts, in the beginning of the church age, people gathered together daily. If something matters to you, if something is your heart, if something is important, you participate. I'm just trying to think of how to frame this. And I want to be, again, I'm not trying to be overly harsh, but then I think even sometimes when people are present, They're just present in body, not in their spirit. I mean, maybe they come, but they're not coming to really listen and learn. They're just, again, it's a checkbox like, okay, I did it. I came to Bible study, Bible education class on Sunday morning, and then I went to the worship gathering. But it was just something they did not to gain truth, not to have transformation happen. And there's so much more than what we're talking about here that they taught, because it's not just this like Sunday morning Bible education class. It's not like official training only. It's not like sitting down like I'm doing right now. When the Bible talks about Barnabas and Saul teaching, the word there was a formal teaching like this, but also informally. What it means is that Barnabas and Saul were also among these people, and they're living the right kind of life. They're applying the knowledge to their day-to-day living. So these people are doing life together as the ecclesia, and Barnabas and Saul are teaching like in a class setting, but they're also teaching by living this way among them. How I talk when I'm not here, how I am when I'm driving my car, how I am when I'm in Walmart, when I'm talking to my neighbor, when I'm just living life. There are these important lessons that can be transmitted there too, because people can see, do they really mean what they say? We know this is true. We see it with our kids all the time. A lot of times as parents, we can get upset because our kids are not doing what we're telling them to do. But if we think about it, they do what they see, not what they hear. So a lot of times we need to back up our talk with actually living it out in our lives. And that's what these guys do. That's what the Christian life is all about, is teaching it in word, teaching it in deed, teaching it with our hearts, with our hands, that we actually live out what we say we believe. And I love it because here in this section, Luke ends this little part with this simple statement, and the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Before this, we'd been called disciples or saints or believers or beloved or followers of the way, the brethren. And now here in Antioch, for the very first time, they're called Christians. And that makes perfect sense. Up until now, the followers of Jesus have been in a Jewish context. And those outside of the faith would never have thought to call Jesus' followers Christians, because Christ is the title for Messiah, chosen one, anointed one, the special one that God had promised that the Jewish people were waiting for. They didn't think Jesus was the Christ. They never would have called his followers Christians. But now we see that the faith has spread into the Gentile world. And as non-believers are interacting with them, and they're hearing this story that, man, there are these really weird, strange people, and they're following this guy Jesus, who they say is God. He's God in the flesh, and he died on a cross, and he was buried, and then he rose from the dead. And they say this Jesus is the Christ, this Jesus is the Messiah. We'll just call them Christians. Now we understand a couple things. That this actually comes, from the Hebrew Messiah, Greek Christ, and then through the Latin, when the Latin language was naming things, this addition at the end, IAN. What it meant was it was adding on, saying that you're like the party of Christ. That a Christian is a person who was of the party. He was following Jesus. Hey, those Christians are those Jesus Christ people. He's called the Christ, so we're going to call his people Christians. And there's something we need to know about this. See, the people in Antioch were known for calling people names. Like they like to mock people. They like to kind of make fun of people. So as this Jesus following grew, as more and more people came, and it became very obvious to the culture around them they would have been like, hey, like there was a couple of them and now there's more. Now there's a whole crowd. Now there's a whole bunch. And they're weird. They're different than us. I mean, they used to act like us. They used to be part of us. And now all of a sudden they're weird. So as they took notice of them, we're going to insult them. We're going to belittle them. This name Christian was not an honor. It was not positive. But the believers of Jesus Christ heard this. And they responded to this insult in a completely unexpected way. Instead of getting upset, angry, hurt, instead of being afraid, they're like, Christians. Yeah, that's good. That's a good way of defining and describing who we are because our identity is in Christ. So yeah, we are the Jesus people. We are the party of Christ. We are the followers of the way. The Christians just fits it. It says everything. And also Jesus had warned his followers, and I'm sure this was part of what people would share about Jesus, that if you follow him, you're going to be treated this way. In Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 11, this is the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is giving the Beatitudes, this preamble to the actual sermon. This is what the kingdom of heaven will be like, and this is what it will be like for the people in the kingdom. He said, blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great, and for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. See, Jesus prepared us as followers. It's not going to go easy for us. We're not going to be loved. We're not going to be liked. We're not going to be respected. The culture, the world outside of a relationship with Jesus will not understand us. So being identified so personally, so intimately with their Lord and their Savior, having something, being called something that the world would easily proclaim, yep, this is who we are. It obviously felt right to these believers, and it stuck. And in studying, I found this story. There's a church historian, Eusebius, and he was writing about a believer who was martyred, who was persecuted for his faith. He talks about a man whose name was Sanctus from Lyons, France. And he was actually arrested and tortured because he was a follower of Jesus. And Eusebius writes that as they tortured him cruelly, they hoped to get him to say something evil or blasphemous. This was very much part of, and still is today, what Christians face in persecution. Deny your Christ or we'll kill you. Profane the name of your Lord or we will torture you. So as they're torturing him and they're hurting him and they're beating him, they say, what's your name? And this guy Sanctus, this is all, he said, I'm a Christian. What nation do you belong to? And he said, I'm a Christian. Well, what city do you live in? Tell us something. I'm a Christian. And as the questioners, these people persecuting him, got angrier and angrier, they would, again, more and more pressure. They're trying to break him. Well, are you a slave or are you a free man? I am a Christian, was the only thing that he would say. No matter what question they asked, no matter how much pain they promised, no matter how much relief they said they would give if he would just answer their questions, the only thing he would say is, I am a Christian. It made his torturers more and more determined to break him. But no matter what they did, no matter how hard it became, they could not break this man. And he died with the words on his mouth, I am a Christian. That story comes from Eusebius' church history. And I think it's interesting because we read the book of Acts and we skip over this stuff. And I don't know. I mean, today, when you're called a Christian, when you say, I'm a Christian, or someone asks you, are you a Christian? Do you understand what it means? And do we understand what we're proclaiming about our identity and how it means the world may treat us? I mean, we've been extremely blessed in America that we don't suffer from this kind of persecution. But if the surveys are to be believed, more and more and more people, even in America, are looking at Christians in a negative light. And there's more and more conflict and verbal attacks and insults being thrown at Christians. But do we expect anything else? All right, so let's move on because we've got a couple verses left. And Luke, again, he does a little mini story that seems like it doesn't quite fit in. He's talking about all of this going on in Antioch, and then he talks about these people who were from Jerusalem that came to Antioch, and you're kind of like, well, what does this have to do with anything? So verse 27. Now at this time, some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. Now remember, Jerusalem was on a hill, so wherever you went, north, east, south, west, it was always you're coming down from Jerusalem, or if you're going to Jerusalem, you're going up wherever you're at. That's just the way they spoke. Luke says, now at this time, it literally means and in these days. So when Barnabas and Saul are living in Antioch, when they're teaching the church, where people are coming to faith and being trained and equipped and prepared, these prophets come. Prophets, the word is used in the New Testament for someone who speaks from divine inspiration, the message of God. But the problem we have is that we don't understand, because the idea of a prophet for many today is like it's an office of the New Testament church, and it's not. They're not elders, they're not teachers, they're not leaders, though those people could have this gift of prophecy, but these are people who are going about, and under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they illuminate, they shine God's truth. Nowadays, this gift is not operating the same. We have the Scripture. The Scripture tells us the truth of God. But the primary calling of those people in this generation was to, again, this is what God's message is to you. And occasionally, they would also foretell that there's a future event. And even in their foretelling, the whole purpose was to shine a light on the truth, on the word and the will of God. Prophets point people to God. So what did these prophets do? Verse 28. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and began to indicate by the Spirit that there would be certainly a great famine in all over the world. And this took place in the reign of Claudius. Now, again, I want to say this. Prophecy is not primarily about giving people information so we can prepare for a future event. We can become preppers or anything else. I mean, that is something that helps. But again, it's to keep your eye on what God's doing. Prophecy is not there to satisfy my curiosity. Well, what's going to happen? Some people always want to, well, this is what this prophecy means, and this is this, and we're going to look for this and look for that. Again, no, it's to point me to who God is and the message he has. It's not about getting more information. It's not about getting more power because I know the day or this or that or the other. It's not about control. It's not about authority. It's about how is this going to help me know God better and to live this relationship better. True prophecy stirs within us a desire to get closer to God, to understand his will and to be faithful to him. Now, the interesting thing about this prophecy that Agabus gave is that the Jewish Roman historian Josephus, in his book of Antiquities, number 20, records this. Herod, the brother of Agrippa who had perished, was allowed to govern over Chalcis, and he asked Claudius Caesar for control over the temple along with the sacred treasury. He also asked for the ability to choose the high priest, and he was given all that he had asked for. Around this time lived a queen, Helena of, I'm going to have trouble with these names, guys, Adiabene, along with her son Azates, and they both began to follow the Jewish way, turning away from their past lifestyles. Her arrival was great, was of great help to the masses in Jerusalem, for there was a famine in the land that overtook them, and many people died of starvation. So Agabus, we see in Scripture, in Acts, talked about this famine that was going to come over the land in the reign of Claudius, and we have a historian that records the same thing. But it wasn't just Josephus. Suetonius, Tacitus, and others all mention a famine that occurred somewhere around the years of 45, 47 AD. And we know from history that Claudius reigned from 41 to 54 AD. I'm just going to tell you, when I read the Bible and I hear this and then history kind of confirms it, that's pretty amazing to me. And some critics, though, say, okay, there was a famine, but this prophet said it was going to be over the whole world, and that didn't happen. There's never been this worldwide famine. And, well, they're grasping at straws there, because when the prophet said in the whole world, back then in the way that they spoke, the whole world did not mean the whole world, the entire world. In the culture of the day, in the language of the day, all over the world, or the whole world, meant the Roman world. Like, this is all the world, the known world, this Roman influence. And that's what we see happening. But then I asked the question, why does Luke record this event? Like, okay, it's interesting, but how does it add to the story that God's telling? Why would God want us to know this? As we see the church opening up, as Gentiles are added into the family, where there used to be conflict, there used to be hostility, there used to be separation, isolation, division between these two groups of people, the Jewish people and the Gentiles, now we see something interesting that would never have happened before. This famine is recorded. The reason that I believe that it's in here is it lets us know the effect the gospel has, how Jesus transforms us in our relationships. Let's read the rest of Acts 11. We read that they're told, that these believers in Antioch are told about this famine. And then Luke says, and in the proportion that any of the disciples had means, each of them determined to send a contribution for the relief of the brethren living in Judea. And this they did, sending it in charge of Barnabas and Saul to the elders. Here at the end of this section, I see something beautiful. The transformational ministry of the Holy Spirit. The disciples, the members of the family, they're part of the ecclesia, the Gentiles in Antioch, who would have been so separated from the Jewish people, and there was so much hostility between them. Now in Christ, as any of them had means, they took something, whatever they could afford, whatever they had, whatever they could sacrifice, and they sent this to their brethren, their loved ones in Jerusalem, people they had never seen before, people that they didn't know, people that the only thing they had in common was that we love and worship Jesus, that we have surrendered to Jesus Christ, that we belong to God. The weight of this, that in the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, through the teaching, both formal and informal, of Barnabas and Saul, the transformation of these Christians, they saw the truth of the unity of the body of Christ, that we are all interconnected. We are one. Jerusalem had sent them Barnabas to help them, and now they were sending him back with the resources needed to help their brothers and sisters in Jerusalem. The world has such a misunderstanding of what the church really is. People in the church, sometimes we have a misunderstanding of what the church really is. We're a family. We love one another. We serve one another. We care about one another. And the church is not a physical location. It's not a building. It's not a place. It's not one group of people. The church is made up of born-again believers in Jesus Christ. everywhere and every when. I'm connected to all believers as part of the family of God. And very quickly I see, and this is what's so beautiful, that former prejudice, that former hatred, suspicion, animosity, fear, it's all been replaced by love, concern, and unity. For these believers in Antioch, they must have understood the real meaning of the words. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And as each had means everyone that could give did give. It wasn't the well-off. It wasn't just those who had extra. It was like, hey, I'm going to figure out what I can give up or what I can sacrifice, and I'll give something. Remember what Jesus said when he was looking at the temple treasury, and people went back and forth and they were giving, and then the widow came up with just 2 mites, 2 little pennies, and she put them both in. He said she gave more than all the rest because they gave out of their extra. She gave out of her need. She gave everything. Not one of these believers thought that what they had wasn't worthy, that it wasn't enough, that it wasn't going to make a difference. They're like, we're going to put it in the hands of the master and he'll take care of the rest. David Guzik, a guy that writes commentary, said it this way. This means that they gave according to the ability of their resources. For those who had more gave more, but it also means that they gave according to the ability of their faith. They trusted in their gift to God for the work, that it was worthy of investment in his kingdom. It would not be a loss. And Luke ends this chapter saying they sent it from Syria and Antioch to Jerusalem by Barnabas and Saul to the elders in Jerusalem. Elders, these are the leaders of the church. We see in the New Testament that the pastors, the overseers, the elders are those men who are equipped and qualified and chosen by God to lead the local church. That's the biblical plan. And we see the church already with a very quick time was being ordered by the Holy Spirit to function in a God-given way. There's God-given roles for the unity and the good of God's church. That includes eldership in the local church. And here we see these believers, they look at Barnabas and Saul, these men who have trained us, that have loved us. We love them, we trust them. We took this collection and we're just going to give it to them and trust them. And they're going to take it to the elders. And the elders, we're going to trust them to do what's right and take care of the brothers and sisters. That's why that story is there. That's why we read about this, to understand the difference that Jesus makes, the difference being a Christian makes, and how we're called to operate as a body of faith. So I hope that you're, again, enjoying this. I hope you're getting something out of this. We do this live Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. here at the Westport Christian Church. If you're local, you want to come visit us, please feel free. If you're online, if you have questions, please let us know. And then from now until next week, start reading chapter 12. We're going to talk about that next time. And remember, I've always told you that I'm noticing there's this pattern in the book of Acts. The believers are being faithful. They're following Jesus. They're doing what God is requiring of them. Great success happens. And after success happens, we see a persecution or a problem come. And then the believers have to either rely on Jesus and do the right thing and stay faithful, and they stay faithful, and success comes out of those problems, only to have another cycle of problems. So we're ending 11 on a pretty high note. Things went well. Things are going great in the church. We are seeing people come to salvation in Jesus Christ. The church is unified and loving one another. So how do you think chapter 12 is going to start? Read it and find out, and we'll talk about it soon. God bless.